Welcome to Curiosity Conversation number 3 with Chapel by the Sea. Today I'll be interviewing Jane Mahorney. Jane has been around the chapel for a long time. You can often see her as a greeter at the church. She wears the cutest hats. Sometimes you'll see her on the congregational life team helping out with the kitchen crew, providing some of our amazing meals or helping to clean up after that. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jane Mahorney. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you Jane Mahorney. So, Jane, hello. Tell us just an introduction. Give us an introduction about who you are, where you're from, and all that.
I was born and raised in a little town of Cynthiana, Kentucky, and population 4,800. And my getting ready to celebrate the second anniversary of my 39th birthday on July the 8th, which will make me 78, in case you didn't want to do the math.
Right.
I've went to a high school that was very small. We had like 220 students from 7th grade through 12, and I graduated in a class of 38. And this year is our 60th reunion. We've always had a high school reunion every year, the whole school, because we were so small. And the school closed in 1962, so there was no school anymore. So all of us have gotten together and come from all over the United States back for these reunions. And but like I say, I was an only child. My parents were my best friend. I had a wonderful childhood, and have always had a lovely life.
Yeah.
And when I graduated from high school, I graduated as salutatorian of my class, which I've worked hard to get to that point. And decided that my mother wanted me to go to school to be a school teacher. My father wanted me to go to college to be a CPA. And I decided to go to nursing school. So I made my own choice.
Yeah. Well, kind of reflecting back on those early years, how do you think being an only child has shaped you?
Made me very independent. Mm-hmm. Although in early years as a high school student, I was very bashful and very backward. And they used to, when I graduated, though, as salutatorian of the class, they signed my yearbook to the silent genius of the class because I was always so bashful.
Ah, I like that, the silent genius. Now we know what to call her, folks.
Right. Oh, I have lots of nicknames, believe me.
So where did you go to school? Where did you go to nursing school?
I applied to Lexington, Kentucky. Back then, they didn't have degree programs like they do now. Back then, it was always 3-year diploma nursing schools, and they usually were connected with a hospital. And we had Good Samaritan Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, which was a Methodist hospital. I grew up in the Methodist church, so I applied to Good Sam and got accepted there. And like I say, you went 3 years instead of like 4, but we went 11 months out of the year. So we basically had 4 years of schooling, just like you would now with a degree.
Okay, yeah.
And so we had a very lengthy, very broad, I should say, training. Back in those days, we were all faced with the problem of tuberculosis. Mm. And there was a tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. There were several in Kentucky. And the one in Louisville, though, was the one where they sent patients to have surgeries and different things. Well, that was part of our training. We had to go and live in the dorm there at the hospital there for 6 weeks and actually work in the tuberculosis hospital, which, needless to say, mask, all caps, and covering is not a new issue for me. Yeah. We had to wear those every single day.
Yeah.
And we also had they also sent us to Washington, D.C. to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which was a psychiatric hospital. So we lived in the dorm there on the grounds of where this hospital was for 3 months. Well, when we first arrived there by train, we got an orientation of the hospital overall, telling us that they had 5,000 patients. Well, my lip fell to the floor thinking, oh my gosh, this is bigger than my hometown. And but quite an experience. I mean, we had patients from all ages of children all the way up to senior adults. And it was really something to be remembered.
Yeah. So was it, I mean, I can imagine it was kind of scary to live in a TB hospital. I mean, am I right? Was that kind of scary?
Well, we had our own separate dorm, and yes, I mean, we were young enough that I guess we didn't think about it as much because we were covered, and we wore scrub gowns, masks, skull caps. We wore things over our shoes, just like we were going to be doing surgery, So, and then we took all that off before we went back to the dorm, and we lived in a dorm then where we didn't have to worry. But yeah, it was different. But and plus the hospital had no air conditioning, and of course we were there in the summertime, so needless to say, we took a lot of showers when we got back to the dorm.
Yeah. So okay, I know you finished your nursing career working, collecting blood and plasma. Is that right?
Well, I finished my nursing career, and I did work in a hospital for about 4 years, I guess, something like that, before I started having children. And that's where I came out of my shell, was when I worked at the hospital. I had a head nurse who realized how bashful I was, and she said, honey, you can't be like this. And she would ride me from the time I got to work in the morning till I got off at 3:30 in the afternoon, and make me go do the rounds with the doctors, make me do this, make me do that, which I'm glad she did. I really credit her for a lot of coming out of my shell. And I ran into her many, many years later at a seminar, and I took some of my staff that were with me over to introduce them. She put her arm around me and she said, I want you to know I made this girl what she is today. And they all looked at her and said, oh, thanks a lot. You're the one. I really say she did me a big, big favor.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't experience you as particularly quiet or shy. So that's interesting.
Most people don't anymore, thank goodness. But after
you're not obnoxious, but you're humble, but I don't think of you as shy and retiring. Yeah.
I love people. I've always enjoyed people. And after my children were born, I decided I'd like to go back to work. And I saw an ad in the paper where they were looking for a nurse to be a supervisor in a blood bank, the blood bank there in Lexington, Kentucky. I had since moved to Lexington and lived in Lexington. So I applied for the job. Well, I was hired on the spot. They were so thrilled that I had come in to fill out an application, and I became the supervisor of the donor room where donors came in to give blood, and enjoyed doing that for a few years. And then finally they put me in charge of mobiles, and this blood bank in Lexington covered 52 counties in central and eastern part of Kentucky. So mobiles traveled daily out to all these different counties to draw blood, because the blood came back to Lexington, got processed there, and then got shipped back to individual hospitals in that same area. And so anyway, that was really very interesting work. And of course, we went through a lot of problems over the years with that too. We were into when AIDS started and all that, we had to be, start wearing gloves and everything. And that was another trying time, but we all got through it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we worked a lot of long hours. They sent us down to, I'm trying to remember the name of the town now. Anyway, Corbin, Kentucky. There was an American Greetings factory there, and they'd send us there, but they wanted us to be there to draw blood from all the employees that wanted to give for all 3 shifts. So we got up and left at 2:30 in the morning to get to Corbin, to get started, to catch the night shift as they were getting off, catch the day shift people, and then catch second shift people. And by the time we finished, packed up all of our gear, got back home, it was usually around 10 o'clock at night. Ooh. So we put in some long days.
Yes. Well,
sometimes we would stay overnight, but a lot of times we did it all in one day.
You have some funny stories from your time, Clay. Tell us 1 or 2 of those stories.
Oh, and back to the nursing thing. Back in the days when we went to school, each school had its own hat, and that's how you were recognized, what school you went to, by the cap you wore. So I have a picture. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, that's quite a cap.
That was
show it again, though.
That was called our turkey tail cap. We had to fold those things when they were laundered. We had to take them and fold them all into a little bitty pleat. Well, that took an education in itself just to do that. And when we'd walk across the grounds in training in Washington, D.C., patients would be sitting out on the grounds and they'd start laughing and pointing and say, "There goes those Kentucky girls." They knew us by our caps. But anyway,
that's a weird looking cap. I'm just saying it.
Right. I still have one too. I kept it, even though they don't wear them anymore. And but anyway, with the blood banking, when we traveled to one of the hospitals down in eastern Kentucky, we were down there to draw blood one day, and when the donors would come in, we'd have a staff usually of 6 of us, or better, 8 maybe. We'd have them stop at the first place was the receptionist, where she would sit down and fill out all the information and then pass them on to the next person who did all the screening process. Well, we had one donor came in late in the afternoon, and he walked over, and he was black from head to toe, covered with coal dust. So when he sat down and she was filling out all the information, she asked him his occupation. He looked up at her. He said, "Banker, of course."
What do you think, lady?
Right. So we used to get a lot of funny stories and things like that. And we had another place we went in to do a coal mine. That was in Hazard at Lost Mountain Coal Mine. Well, it had kind of rained the night before, and when I had to go into the office, introduce myself, that we were there to do the blood drive. And the gentleman, when I walked in, he looked up and he said, "Oh my, all white." He said, "I haven't seen all white in a long time." And I'm thinking, "Oh my, I'm in trouble." So we get up, they took us up the mountain to a training center that's up on top of this mountain, which was like a double wide trailer where we were to set up our equipment and do this blood drive. Well, when we get out to carry the equipment in, it's muddy. My white shoes I had to end up throwing away, I think, because there was so much mud. Well, we got inside, we got everything set up, and we had donors coming in. And I had one young man who had never given blood before, and I told him, I said, "Okay, get up here and sit down on this bed." And he kind of shuffling his feet, wringing his hands. And I said, "Okay, get up here and sit down, please." And he said, "I got mud on my feet." And I looked at him, I said, "No kidding." I said, "Show me somebody in here that doesn't have mud on their feet." So I got him laughing, got him up there, got him through the whole process, and before he realized what he'd done, and he did just beautifully. He did fine for a first-time donor. And one other experience I had when I was working in the donor room one day, I had a gentleman that came in, right at quitting time. And I saw on his record the 2 times he had donated before, he passed out both times. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really what we need right here at quitting time. So I got him in the donor chair and I started talking, and I mean, talk, asking questions, made him start talking to me, you know, giving me about his life and everything. In the meantime, I've gotten the needle in his arm, got him through the process, and I finished it, which only took 5 to 10 minutes usually to draw a whole pint of blood. And I got the needle out and I said, okay, you can put your hand over here and I'll put pressure on this. And he said, what? Are you done already? I said, yes, we're done. He looked up and he said, Jane, you're good. He said, I've passed out the last 2 times I came in here. He said, I'm going to ask for you the next time I come back. So it was always fun to get somebody who was really scared and, you know, get through it without any problems.
Good for him for giving blood, even though he was terrified, I guess, right?
And of course, the other thing now is, I'm sure you all have seen on the news that the plasma they're using from recovered virus patients and using the plasma to give to the ones that are critically ill right now.
Yeah.
And that seems to be working. And I know they're doing it in Kentucky because it was on the news, and the guy that had that they're using his plasma to start with was from my hometown, my little hometown of Cynthiana. So I thought that was very interesting. And then they're starting it in other states, I've noticed on the news yesterday and today. So I'm hoping that this will work, because when you look back in 1918, they also used the plasma for Spanish flu back in the early days.
Okay.
So apparently this is something maybe that they'll do more research on and come up with more ideas to use this plasma for other things. You know, when somebody's already had it, they've built up the antibodies in their blood. So then when they give this plasma then to somebody else, then you're giving them something to help them fight the disease.
Wow. Well, I think Becky said that the person she knows
had gotten the plasma.
Had gotten plasma. Is that right? I'm trying to unmute you, Becky, but I'm having trouble.
Yes, she did say that.
Yes, and he got the plasma, I believe, early yesterday. So okay. I'm in touch with someone from my church in Ohio who is a neighbor of his. And so I'll be getting an update, and I'm so hopeful that this works for him.
Yeah. Right. Well, I thought that was so funny when you mentioned that, because I was going to bring that up too. And I thought, well, you just led me into my talk today.
Yeah.
Yes. And so hopefully for Thursday, I will continue prayers for him. And I hope that I'll have a good report for everyone on Thursday.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds good.
Well, I'm going to invite you to put your screen back on gallery view. And Jane, I didn't even get into your family, but maybe somebody else will have questions about that. But if anybody has a question for Jane, now's your chance. The silent genius awaits your questions.
There was another blood drive I forgot to mention too. We all used to fight to get on that one, which was Dr. Scholl's factory in Falmouth, Kentucky. Every time we went there, the manager would come out with the catalog and hand it to us and tell us to write down our name, what size shoe we wanted, and the number of the shoe in the catalog, and we all got a free pair of shoes.
Nice. Wow. That's great.
And what brought you to Clearwater Beach?
Well, my parents used to snowbird in this area, and I would come down to visit them. And jokingly one day we were driving from, they stayed up at Sand Key at Crescent Beach Club, and we were driving from there back over to Bel Air Bluffs to have get the grocery store. And I just jokingly said, when my children are grown, I'm going to live in Bel Air Bluffs. Well, little did I know many years later that I did come to Bel Air Bluffs. I lived at Fort Bel Air right there as you come across the bridge. I lived there for 14 years. And when I was living there is when I first started going to Chapel by the Sea. And I've lived there till, I can't remember, 2014, 15. And then I decided I wanted to live on the beach. So I went to North Reddington Beach to live. And then when Irma came along, I decided I didn't like being on the beach. So I moved back inland, and I now live in Seminole.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I also worked in the blood bank in Florida too. I didn't tell you that part either, that when I first came to Florida back in 1998 or 1989, I got a call from the CEO of the blood bank here in Florida in Clearwater offering me a supervisor's job. And I said, I had retired, and I thought, I don't know that I really want to work. And I thought, how did he get my name and phone number? Well, my boss from back in Kentucky knew they were looking for a supervisor. She was so kind to give him my name and phone number. And I did go to work for him, but not as the supervisor. I told him, I said, after I filled out the application and sent it in and went in for the interview, I told him, I said, I wouldn't mind working part-time, but I don't want to work full-time. Well, that's how I learned my way around Pinellas County, because we couldn't ride on the blood mobile. We had to drive and meet the bus wherever we were having a blood drive. So we'd get a sheet of directions how to get to where we were going that day. So that's how I learned my way around Pinellas County. And I know a lot of the back roads, so I don't have to fight the traffic.
Good. Somebody else have a question for Jane?
Well, I would like to hear about her family, because we know she stopped working for a while to have her children.
I have a son and a daughter. They're both in their 50s. I have 6 grown granddaughters, and I have 4 great-grandchildren, and my 5th great-grandchild, my youngest granddaughter and her spouse are having my 5th great-grandchild 1st of June.
Oh, wow.
And I just feel so thrilled to be young enough to enjoy them all. Most of them are in Kentucky, but I do have one granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, and her 2 children are in Sarasota, and my daughter lives here in Pinellas Park, so I do have family here.
Oh, that's great. Are any of your children or your grandchildren in nursing?
No. No, none of them followed my footsteps. My oldest granddaughter probably is more like me than any of the rest of them, and she always looks to me for advice. She said, "Grandma, you always give good advice."
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Going once, going twice.
Thank you all very much.
Let's thank Jane for sharing of herself.
Oh, that was fun, Jane. Thank you.